This video is brought to you by Shudder. Use the code NOCTURNAL for 30 days free. At Shudder, you can watch the latest videos of horror, thrillers, weird documentaries. You're going to want this. So please use the code NOCTURNAL for 30 days free.
I'm so into you, I can barely breathe. And all I wanna do is to fall in deep. We're closer now.
This is based on a very real nightmare I had when I was in my early 30s. I woke up screaming. I'd had a long day and wearily climbed up the stairs to my little attic room. I hadn't even done much, just emailed a few prospective employers, did some laundry, seemingly insignificant things. Still, they wore me out. I slipped out of my jeans and t-shirt and crept under the old blanket on my bed. It was just a futon mattress on the floor, but it was comfortable. I had a lonely life, and I'd always had issues with that. I hated being alone as much as I was. I wished I had more love in my life, or closer friends. I closed my eyes. After a while, my thoughts finally stopped racing and worries of finding a new job eased. Sleep swirled in and took over. I woke up, bathed, had breakfast, and started looking for a job. At the end of the day, I went to bed. I woke up, quote, had a day, and went to bed. This continued for years. Sometimes I found a job for a little while. Sometimes I visited family. Once or twice, I thought I was in love. Nothing ever lasted more than a couple of years. Over time, I felt more and more alone, even when friends surrounded me. Somehow, I died. It wasn't important how, it wasn't dramatic in any way. It just happened. I don't even know if anyone around me mourned. The whole thing seemed like nothing more than a blink of my eyes. I was born. I went to school. I grew up. I lived another unremarkable life with an unremarkable career and an unremarkable love life. I became old and died. I was born. This time I was a boy. I went to school, I grew up, I lived, and I died. I was born. This time I was a girl in a poor country. I didn't go to school. I barely scraped by on meager food my mother gave me, and I died very young. I was born. I was a girl in a cold place, and there were no such thing as schools. I grew up, found love, had children, and died. I was born. I was a boy. I became a soldier and was killed in a war. I was born. I went to school. As I grew up, I began to have dreams and feelings of déjà vu. I was hit by a drunk driver and died. I was born. I went to school. I grew up and had dreams and feelings of déjà vu. Sometimes I recognized places that I'd never visited before. I lived in a big city. I became sick and I died. I was born. I was born in a particular country to special parents. I was treated well. I remember things from former lives and spoke of them. I was thought insane and locked away. I died. I was born and I died. I was born. I was born. I was born. And the same things happened over and over. The locations changed, the time and history changed, my skin color changed, as did my eye color and my gender. Time was not a straight line. It was like a piece of wadded up thread. And I died. Over many lives, I began to recognize that sometimes I was better off if I kept certain things to myself. I learned not to speak of this feeling of déjà vu, or why I recognized places and sometimes people that I had no business recognizing. I was born, and I realized that I became someone who'd loved in a previous life. That was weird. I was crushed when the person who I'd already been died. I was born and grew up and was murdered by someone I had already been. I was born and went to school and grew up and tried to have a normal life. I began to recognize myself in the eyes of the many people I passed on the street, so I moved. I recognized the streets of the city I moved to and dreaded seeing myself in the eyes of everyone I passed. I made friends, but it felt so strange. Some of my friends were me in other lives. I still felt alone. I drank and drove one night and killed a child. I killed myself. I was born. This time was a little different. I was a kitten. I was chosen by a sweet little girl, brought home and treated as her very special pet for the scant 15 years that I lived. I was born. I was human again. I was that little girl. I was born. I was an elephant. I was born. I was human. I was born. I was human. I was an unwanted child cast out on the streets and died. I was born. I was a spider. I was born. I was born. I was born. I was born. I was reborn as every human that had ever lived, past, present, or future. I was reborn as every animal that had ever lived. I was reborn as every growing plant, every fungus, and every bit of mold, and I died every death that had ever been imagined. It seemed that time went faster and faster as this went on. The last million or so lives were just a mere blur, just the basic highlights standing out, and the growing feeling of dread as I wondered what the conclusion of these quickly speeding by lives would be. I was born, and I died, and I was reborn, and I died again. I think the last life was as a single blade of grass growing in a meadow. As I died, the last death on Earth, I was born and died on other planets, other galaxies. Finally, it was done. I had been everyone, every living thing ever, and I knew it. And I knew. My consciousness expanded, and I was aware of everything, of all my lives that were happening simultaneously all over the universe, how everything worked together or pulled apart. We were one, me. And time flew on, and I watched from uncountable eyes as well as my central awareness. Stars were born and died. Planets evolved from lush green and blue marbles to dusty rocks and crashed into each other. All life ceased. My universe grew dark and cold. Time ceased to have meaning. It was just an awareness suspended in the dark. And I was alone.